Srujana here today. Srujana here is not only a top voice in AI, but also a VP and Group Director of the Machine Learning Center of Excellence. And she also has been recently appointed as one of the senior fellows for World in 2050. And it's exciting because you can imagine how only a handful of people were appointed there. So it's a great day for us to have Srujana here today and hear about data science from this amazing woman tech leader. Again, hello and welcome, Srujana.
Thanks, Jane. Thank you so much for having me here. I am really excited to have this conversation.
Thank you so much for being here and for your time. So, before we move on, is it okay if you share some of your journey in the data science domain, including probably your current portfolio and how you got here?
Awesome. Yes, I would be happy to share that. So, I was born to the family of academicians, and my parents inculcated a very important value of appreciating gifts of life. They inspired me to focus on academics, and pursued engineering for my graduation. During the eighth semester of my engineering, I got placed with the Energy and Resources Institute. It is there that I got to work on real world projects that involved humongous amount of data. That was my first time real world exposure to the field of data, and I was totally fascinated by the potential of this field. So I went on to pursue my master's with specialization in operational research and started my career as a data scientist with Hewlett Packard. It's there that I got to build a lot of customer science models, do a lot of hands-on modeling, and I went on to lead its big data analytics center of excellence. And consulting domain was really booming at that point of time, and it's a exponential growth being part of the consulting firm. So I ventured there and pursued my career with Accenture, leading its Google portfolio in the consumer hardware space, working here at Google's headquarters here in California, Mountain View, leading some of the AI products for its consumer hardware division. It was wonderful. Had received a humongous amount of understanding, working collaboratively with multiple product teams. And with that knowledge, I moved on to Walmart. Here, my portfolio primarily focuses on building AI products for our omni retail business, as well as for the new and emerging business in the consumer ad tech and data monetization, focusing on building centralized products. So my area of focus happens to be not only building AI products, but primarily on driving value for the organization by scaling and effectively deploying these products at the enterprise scale.
Wow, that is awesome. And it is so interesting to hear how heavily involved, the connection between machine learning or data science and consumer sector. So everything these days, and you're currently working for one of the largest corporations on planet. So we can only imagine how significant the role of data science is. So data science at scale. So somewhere on LinkedIn, you mentioned about how we're living in the era of the data deluge, with nearly 1.1 trillion megabytes of data generated every single day, and the number already was from 2022. So you can only imagine how the number is only going up and up and up, and will be in the future. So 70% of the global GDP already had undergone digitization back then. So again, it is a very important topic to discuss the data science at scale specifically. So it can mean different things to different people according to you. We want to hear how you define data science at scale, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you rightly mentioned, there's a humongous amount of data that is getting generated. But this data is not only humongous, it's also heterogeneous and non intuitive in nature, right? So, there's a significant amount of unstructured data, and it's extremely difficult to analyze unstructured data. So, 80% of this unstructured data was left um, unanalyzed, primarily because it's difficult to fine tunes, as well as specifically get that kind of a computing resources to analyze that much amount of non-structured or unstructured data. So with this heterogeneous data, most of the organizations are now thinking of democratization of data and productizing AI. Now, those are really important aspects, because when you have petabytes of data, what use is that data if you're not able to use that effectively to drive decisions? So they are effectively focusing and constantly focusing on productizing AI. And what it means is it's a journey of translating the insights generated from exploratory analysis to scalable models. It involves nuances of deploying the models in the production environment and then scaling them effectively. So there are a lot of benefits associated with productizing AI, right? And when I talk about AI at scale, it's more about productizing AI. One of the benefits happens to be that when we deploy these AI algorithms at scale, we can help the organization move up the data and AI value chain. Well, we can help the organization utilize its scarce data science and AI resources to do the niche data science and AI work that they enjoy the most, freeing them up from the mundane, repetitive tasks that they don't enjoy, which could be around data wrangling, etc. And this productizing AI can also help in terms of automation. When we automate certain things, then we are freeing up the bandwidth of the data scientists and AI experts, which they can now use in doing a lot of experimentation, fostering innovation, thereby helping the organization be more innovative. And the other aspect is, uh, when I mean data science or AI at scale, it's also about standardization of technology capabilities. If the organization is operating across different channels, across different geographies, we need to build standardized technology capabilities. And these is important, especially when we look at AI governance, focusing on explainability and interoperability and monitoring of these solutions effectively.
Very, very interesting. And I can only imagine the complexity of the project when you're trying to train the models with this, as you put it, unstructured and heterogeneous data sets. So, and also it involves different teams and different resources and all that, right? Which we'll be covering a little bit later. But I wanted to focus a little more on the benefits and risks and challenges associated with productizing data sets. You mentioned some of it already, but as an expert in AI applications, specifically in retail sectors, how what can you share about training models on large data sets?
Yeah, so we can talk a little bit about some of the risk associated with productizing AI. I already mentioned the benefits earlier, but like starting with a risk, and then we can talk about large data sets. One of the risks associated with productizing AI happens to be that sometimes the projects succeed, but sometimes the project fail as well. When the projects fail, the best case scenario is that we have built only the proof of concepts, and the worst case scenario is that we have built the entire product and the results are not accurate, it's not useful. So we have invested a lot of resources by building and productizing certain things which are not necessarily relevant in the context. So that kind of loses the confidence of the management on these data science teams, thereby losing the resource investments. The second aspect of the risk is around the concept drift. It's a phenomena in machine learning context, which indicates that machine learning algorithms get smarter over a period of time. But without the constant feed of new data, they degrade in quality and become stale and especially lose their accuracy as soon as they're deployed in the production environment. So they need to be constantly connected to the new data feed and have effective data wrappers, lack of which can create a lot of challenges, and that's another risk. And it can lead to the production system malfunctioning or failure. The other risk also happens to be around legal consequences. Sometimes productizing AI would lead to productizing the algorithms which are trained on the data that may consist some sort of a bias. So that would mean that when we productize this, we are institutionalizing the bias, which may lead to some sort of a legal and reputational risks for the organization. So these are some things that one needs to really focus on while deploying these AI products at scale. When you talk about training these large data sets, right? So there are certain things that we need to keep in mind. Few of them happens to be around model flexibility, right? So a perfect model may not exist, but then we need to build models at least generic enough that they can accommodate various scenarios and use cases without undergoing or needing a major architectural redesign. So if we build very customized solutions, then every time we have different use case, then we'll have to do effective architectural redesign, which is waste of energy and resources. So we need to build the model such that they are flexible enough to accommodate certain real life scenarios without going through these changes. Now, secondly, we need to focus on compute efficiency as well as runtime. Most of the times, some AI experts or ML engineers are primarily focused on getting the most accurate algorithms in the production environment. That is okay for the proof of concept. But when we are deploying something at scale, the compute efficiency as well as the runtime takes the precedence over the accuracy. So the customers will not be interested to wait for, like, 1 minute or 2 minutes, just like buffering, because we need fractional implications, or, like, we need the algorithms to work in a fraction of a second to provide the right kind of output, data processing such humongous amount of heterogeneous data. So functional usage and compute efficiency, primarily because the organizations would end up spending millions of dollars if we are not really efficient in using the compute resources, they happen to be really important in the production environment. And the last aspect is around creating data wrappers, right? So when we connect these algorithms with the constant and new data feed, we need to make sure that the data wrappers or the engineering wrappers that we're using to connect this data or the new streams of data to these algorithms are strong and robust enough. Because any kind of a deviation that is happening because of the broken data feed is very difficult to detect as compared to the outright application failure. So taking care of all of these things around model flexibility, around compute efficiency, around runtime, as well as the creating effective data wrappers is really important. And these are some of the important concepts and phenomena that one needs to keep in mind while training large data sets.
It's very interesting and also amazing to know that how this data science management has to happen at scale, but also you require a lot of meticulous and consistent attention to really well manage it. So thank you so much for sharing it. And also, it's important that, again, the consistent feed of clean data is so crucial. Also, to prevent some of the bias, which I believe is another complex discussion required. But I wanted to move on to team building, if that's okay with you. So, having a strong, good team, great team, is one other factor which imply or affect the capability of machine learning models, I believe. So can you probably share the nuances associated with building a high throughput team to well manage these models, and how you can focus on releasing and managing thousands of different models across the enterprise?
Yeah, this is really interesting question and very critical one, Jen. Right? So, managing the teams of data scientists and AI experts who bring in a lot of intellectual or brain power to the ecosystem is really important, right? Because they bring in a lot of intellectual capital, as well as there are different microcultures in which they thrive and grow. So, one of the things that I've learned through my career is we need to ensure that the teams are empowered, right? So, this is very important, especially when we are working with researchers, when you're working with people who have got a lot of appetite for experimentation, for taking risks. So many a times when we are senior researchers or when we are senior leaders, it may not be practically possible for us to be part of multiple meetings and conversations and discussions. So empowering the team helps take certain things off our plate, but it also help them exercise the risk appetite, right? So they can take the decisions, they can make certain decisions based on the information that they have at hand. Sometimes these decisions work. And in the scenarios where they do not work, as leaders, we need to provide that kind of a safety net and introduce that ecosystem of accountability and transparency within the team such that everyone has this kind of a ability to take the risk appetite or exercise the risk appetite without necessarily getting penalized for taking certain risks. So that's really important. The second aspect is I always encourage my team members to find mentors within the organization. Mentorship is really important because it's more of an informal learning that happens within the organization. So these mentors need not be the direct supervisors. They could be someone else or the other leaders working across different parts of the organization. For example, it would be excellent for a data scientist to have a product manager as a mentor because then they will institutionalize or at least inculcate some sort of a product mindset amongst data scientists, and data science and product managers would be able to understand the viewpoint of data scientists and some sort of a features, right? So it's an education happening or mutual mentoring happening on this in this scenario. So finding right kind of a mentors, not necessarily based on their designations, but based on their interest, based on ability to invest time is going to be really crucial in the ecosystem. The other thing is, especially when you're talking about data science and AI, I would really emphasize that everybody involved in this field of emerging technologies has to invest in themselves. What do I mean by that? They need to constantly learn and evolve because the team, as well as the overall ecosystem itself, is evolving at a lightning speed. So, whatever was relevant yesterday is not relevant today, and whatever is relevant today may not be relevant tomorrow. When I started my career as a data scientist, few of the expectations from the data scientist or AI expert were that this person need to have programmatic understanding. They had to have a good domain knowledge. They need to have understanding of statistical concepts. But today, a data scientist or AI expert is expected to have all of that. Along with that, have an ability to understand what is in the technology stack, have an ability to understand the cloud computing infrastructure, have an ability to understand all sort of nuances associated with the production systems because they need to deploy these algorithms in the production systems. Also, need to have visualization understanding because they need to create visualizations to inform about the insights that they are deriving or decisions that they are making. And they also need to have an understanding of ethical and regulatory aspects and new regulatory norms, as well as be updated with GDPR, CCPA, and various other regulations. So there's a lot expected from the AI experts and data scientists these days. So that can only be possible and when these data scientists and AI experts only invest themselves, they'll be able to actually stand up to the or meet these expectations from the ecosystem. So that's why investing in ourselves and continuously growing is going to be really important to thrive and grow in this field.
Absolutely. And having said that, it was actually not on my question list, but I was wondering if I can ask you about NLP. So NLP in the science field oftentimes, is referred to as, natural language processing, especially in the AI field. But you were mentioning the other side of it, side of it and how it can involve with the leadership and getting a stronger leadership and strengthen it. So you mentioned about empowering your team members, but as a leader yourself, how would you recommend us or advise us to implement this NLP in our leadership training?
Yeah. So when you talk about like an NLP in the AI space, it's more around natural language processing, but in the leadership context, it's more about neuro-linguistic programming, right? So what that involves is the language that we use is really important because it kind of reaffirms our thoughts or belief systems and creates possibilities for us to understand the world in the way we understand that, right? So language happens to be a very important way we communicate with ourselves, with the world, and also that helps create our belief systems, our overall philosophies about the world, about the life, right? And that kind of opens different opportunities or it kind of shrinks the opportunities based on how we look at it. So that's why having an understanding of how the leadership paradigms and principles are developed based on our neuro-linguistic processing and formation is going to be very, very important for leaders, right? So we are going to see a lot of new leadership emerging wherein we'll be looking at these traits around combining neuro linguistic programming with natural language processing, thereby creating a new set of leadership styles, specifically in the data science and AI, as well as the emerging technology domains. And this is particularly important if we want to bring in major socioeconomic, environmental, or political shifts within the ecosystem.
Sure, sure, absolutely. Thank you so much for answering this detour, sort of a detour question. Before we wrap up, we want to touch on another very important topic, which is to bring more women to the data science field, and probably with some suggestions to the data science enthusiasts who share the same goal with you. You are currently planning on, and have the ambition for a human-centric and ethical AI model. So would you have a little bit of tips or advices before you go to the women and tech enthusiasts?
Yeah, absolutely. So, overall data science, right? As we start looking at these algorithms, we'll see a lot of automation happening because of generative AI. A new opportunity or the dimension has opened up. We'll see a lot of applications in the quantum computing space as well, in the new realm of how do we deploy these algorithms, like, using distributed computing, how do we scale them, uh, using efficient infrastructure, etc. But at the same time, when we start looking at automating a lot of these things, it can lead to some of the unintended consequences. For example, filter bubble, right? Which talks about, let's say, if we hyper personalize our algorithms, looking at providing the recommendations of only one type to one set of a cohort, then we make them believe that they are getting the representative view of the world, but in reality, they are not, right? So we are keeping on reinforcing the same interests and belief systems, and we see that that's bad for the society at large. And the same thing happens in various other scenarios. We have seen various racist comments unleashed on social media, primarily because algorithms are statistical representation of the world that we live in. If we have some sort of comments and biases in the data on which these algorithms are trained, then we'll see the same thing reflected in our outputs. So that's why having a human in a loop is going to be very, very important. We are already seeing quite a lot of applications of AI for good. However, if we go ahead and start implementing automation and AI algorithms without necessarily having human in a loop, then it may lead to a lot of unintended consequences. And at the same time, it may lead to various other challenges around unemployment, which can lead to some sort of criminal activities and food challenges, etc. So there are multiple kind of negative implications that it may lead to. So being aware of that and cognizant of this and making sure that we need to be the proponents of using AI and technology, but ensuring that there is a human in the loop, ensuring that we are looking at it to bias our future towards the positive outcomes rather than the negative outcomes is going to be very, very important.
So oftentimes I believe awareness is always the key. Thank you so much for your insights. It was such an educational and inspiring talk. Thank you so much for being here again. I want to keep, going on and on and on, but I understand how busy you are these days. So I am going to let you go, but I truly want you to know that I appreciate your time again. Thank you so much and all the best.
Thanks, Shin. It was wonderful having you all, and having this conversation with you and being here. I highly appreciate that. Looking forward to staying in touch again. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.